call. Here is the agenda. I think probably the most pressing things are to discuss Altair and Altair timelines and what we need to do to get from here to there. To that end, the first thing we will talk about is Altair. Prouder forked. I think generally successful. There were a couple of bumps that were ironed out relatively quickly, and I think one of the main bumps was self-healing after like an epoch or so, which is good. If you take a look at the Prouder Explorer or the Piermont Explorer, we're still seeing lower than expected sync aggregate participation. I think that we certainly need to do a bit of digging and analysis on if there's a pattern to who is being missed, if this is a single client issue, or if it's more in the aggregation protocol itself. So we'll try to look into that over the next couple of days and see what we find. I'll let you know. Any comments or discussions on Prouder? Okay. In light of the standing issue with sync aggregates that we still need to uncover, and after some discussions with the prison team, who is simultaneously trying to release Altair and their big V2, I think there's been on their end a request for at least a couple of weeks delay. So rather than doing releases next week and fork at the end of September, do releases at the end of September and fork mid-October. I think that generally, although we need to ship, we need to get it right. So I lean towards doing that, but also simultaneously during this month shifting engineering resources to ensure that we have kind of the next wave of merge implementations ready to work with the execution side, because they are heavily in progress, and I want to make sure that Altair does not begin to be a blocker on that, or that the consensus side doesn't end up being a blocker on that. Also, I think we are continuing to enhance test coverage on Altair and are aiming to do a release today, but then maybe even another one at the end of next week, as we continually kind of go back and forth with the clients on different edge cases and bugs that we're identifying. General planning, other than extended time and identifying the issue on the sync committees on the testnets that we're observing, what else needs to be accomplished in this next month? What are the musts on y'all's end?
I would say just more enhanced testing on testnet. By enhanced testing, I mean slashing, deposit, withdraw, all the manual operations, and will be fun to trigger some like chaos monkey tests with timing, such as like sending the blocks really late, sending the attestations really late, and just see what happens from there.
Right. So Piermont, especially for the Chaos Monkey stuff, might be the better target. I think one of the easiest things we could do is force times to be off. So force subsets of nodes to have their clocks skewed. I think that would induce quite a bit of what you're alluding to, which I think probably we could do without too much issue. We do still have this remaining, let's see, I think it's in the ETH2 clients repo, ETH2 networks repo. There still are a few things to get done on Piermont under scenario testing. If you do have that's not the link. If you do have updated releases, please make sure you're getting them out on Prater and Piermont. I know that a number of us have discussed the shifted timeline outside of this call. I do want to leave some room if people want to chat about it a bit more here. Obviously, no pressure either way on that.
So is that saying we then try and set a fork epoch next meeting or the meeting after?
Let's see. I mean, we could. I think it might be. My calendar is asking me to sign in. I'm sorry. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to see. Apologies. I mean, if we are going to do releases in the last week of September, then we must pick a fork 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather it sooner rather than later. But at least we're picking the fork, even if we pick an epoch a decent way in the future.
Yeah. I mean, and we could do that right now. Especially with the sync aggregate issue not resolved, I'm hesitant to put it on the calendar.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Okay. Okay. After this call, I'm going to circle back with my team and client teams and see who wants to do some of that investigation on the sync aggregate bits, and what we can do to make sure we get through this list on Piermont and any other sort of wacky testing cases, like messing with our clocks and things. Okay. Anything else on Altair with respect to planning? Onward. Thank you. Let's run through some client updates. We can start with load start. I'm having a lot of trouble hearing you, Lion. Can you get closer to the mic? Can anyone else hear Lion? I'm hearing just the faintest murmur. Okay.
Very quiet.
Yeah.
Hey, now it's better?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Sorry. So yeah, we started to implement the merge. Not a lot of progress, but working on it. We have also reduced the memory cost of our states by half, so a lot of less GC. And we have shared a document with our proposal for implementing another client server with Teams. We got some feedbacks and we'll appreciate any more. Also reach out if you are interested to implementing that. That's all, thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Nimbus.
Hi. For the Prater launch, we shipped another beta for Altair beta, but we're now working on preparing a stable release by testing the same code on mainnet. The other notable feature that will be included in this new release is the multi-core BOS verification support that we've been working on, which will be initially an opt-in feature. We've also prepared system packages for Linux and installers for Windows and Mac OS. that will be also shipped in this new release. These installers set up beacon node service on the user machine automatically after installation. On the development front, we've added SSD payloads to the REST API, and we started work on a light client as well. The main focus, I guess, for us for the rest of the month will be preparing for the merge. And the work here will be both on the Nimbus Seed 2 side and the Nimbus Seed 1 as well, because we want to kind of have the capability to operate a network after the merge with both clients. We've also hired Aq Muhammad, who should be known to some of you, who will be working to help us create a mobile UI for monitoring and managing your beacon node.
Very nice. Grandine.
Yes, this is Solis from Grandina team. So worked on some optimizations, and the full focus is still on this multiple runtimes to accommodate the Altier hard fork, and it looks like we are getting closer to having a working version of that. So that's all. Thanks.
Got it. And Lighthouse.
Hello. So we're starting to prepare for our next major release, which is going to include weak subjectivity sync. So we've done a bunch of successful syncs this week, which is cool. It's also going to have support for the Web3 signer, remote signer. We've also been spending a lot of time on analysis of mainnet. We've been working to try and understand why Lighthouse seems to not receive some consistent number of attestations. We also identified some issues with other clients regarding attestation packing inefficiencies and have communicated those. We've been running analysis on late block proposals. We identified an outstanding staking pool and contacted them. We're not exactly sure which client they used. I haven't got much detail. We've made further optimizations in Lighthouse to reduce the impact of late blocks. Like we added some more metrics, and we've also got a special server-side endpoint to try and track the peers and graffitis and browser indexes that late blocks are coming from. And we're also starting work on implementing the latest merge spec, anticipating a new round of testnets next month. That's it for us.
Great. On the attestations that you're not receiving, those are actually, you've figured out they're not hitting your mempool at all? Or is it
Yeah, that
you're
seems to
just
be the
not
case.
putting them in blocks? Okay.
So if we did this thing where we're like shadow proposing blocks. So Michael's been working on this, but so he's when we see a block, we also propose a block and compare the attestations.
Okay.
And we can see that there's some less in ours. And then if we go and take those additional ones and feed them into our mempool, then we do include them. So yeah, we've kind of cleared it from the consensus layer, I guess, and now we're digging deeper into gossip sub, trying to figure out what's going on.
Very interesting. Okay. Thanks, Paul. And Teku.
Yeah, hi. So we've had a few key things going on. So we had an issue with the Alta upgrade on Prada where we were shoving some invalid attestations into blocks and then correctly rejecting our own blocks, which was good. So that's been fixed up. It was an interesting interaction with the gossip validation and signatures where we had a state before the fork activated. So yeah, weren't picking up that the attestation should have been signed with a different fork ID. So we fixed that, and we actually no longer use in the spec, there's the get domain where you pass in a state and it'll take the fork from the state. We've removed that function from Teku entirely so that we're always very deliberate about the fork so that we don't hit these kinds of problems again. We've put in a bunch of fixes for attestations that were for redundant attestations that we were including in blocks. So that should help with some of the issues on mainnet when we get that out in terms of making more space for other attestations and reducing inclusion distances. And Paul Harris, our Paul, has been doing a bunch of work in digging into where we're seeing duplicate attestations and the value of the caches at the application level. So what we found is that essentially anything that is going to be detected as a duplicate is done at the gossip level through the libp2p scene cache, and nothing useful ever gets caught at our application level. Primarily because the application level just sees so many different attestations that it overflows our current cache straight away, and we'd have to make it really dramatically bigger. And libp2p is already holding on to the scene messages for 32 slots, which is as long as they should be valid. So we're going to do some testing on Prada and Piedmont with not having that cache at the application level, and just depending on the scene messages from libp2p. I think Lighthouse has mentioned before that you've seen some attestations that are coming very late, and we've certainly seen that as well. It's a small number, but they're well after they should have been invalid, and it's kind of odd little duplicates that are filtering through there. Beyond that, a bunch more optimization work that's been going on, particularly in terms of the number of calls between the validator client and the beacon node, stuff like that. Just kind of carrying on and improving the world, which is good. So we'll probably get that into releases probably relatively soon if we're not setting an Altair fork epoch, but we'll sort that out. Keep an eye out.
Got it. Thank you, Adrian. And
yeah, we have been seeing. Sorry, I was just going to say we have been seeing lots of old attestations around. I think Lodestar has also noticed old blocks floating around. We haven't looked into it, but I do remember having to make some changes to be more defensive against those. I'm not sure if Michael communicated either, but we've also identified an actor on the network that was sending duplicate aggregate attestations as well, which are probably making people's cases struggle as well. So yeah, some points.
Define duplicate aggregate attestation.
So basically producing two aggregates for the same epoch from the same aggregator index.
Oh,
with
okay.
different values, different roots.
Gotcha. And consistently, like many of them?
Yeah, I believe it's consistent. I didn't look into it, but I believe it's very consistent.
Gotcha.
We've reached out to who we think it is.
Are they at risk of getting slashed? You'd do that if you had the same keys in two places. It's one of the things where your attestation would appear the same, but your aggregate would very likely be different.
Yeah.
You'd get away with it until you propose a block.
That was my suspicion.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Interesting early warning sign though.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Okay. And Prism.
Yep. Hey guys, Terrence here. So last 2 weeks we have been mostly on merging Ethereum code from developer branch to the master branch, making really good progress on that. We went from 10,000 lines to 2,000 lines. And then we are also going through intense code review of the consensus code and the code that uses cache. So those are mostly those are mostly where the big issues are. And then we're preparing for V2 release. We are cleaning up all the features and getting ready for those to be merged to the master. And then just want to give a shout out to the beta 3 SPAT test for the people that work on it. We found the consensus bug regarding validator lifecycle when processing rewards, and the bug has been fixed. And it is in the latest release, and that's on all the test nets. We're also reviewing all the test coverages regarding validator lifecycles. And then regarding mainnet, we have been reviewing our cache implementations. When we first implement those cache, we were prepping the validators to be around 300,000-ish. And now the validator sizes has grown tremendously. So we're reviewing all the sizes again, reviewing all the uses, and reviewing all the usages again. And then last but not least, we have a few new hires, James, which is on this call, and James is working on the front end UI with us. and then Zahu, which some of you guys have met already, and Zahu is working more on the protocol and the research with us. And that's it. Thank you.
And Terrence, y'all also had kind of an overpacking on attestation side too, and that went out into release last week.
Yes, that did.
So if we look at mainnet, we should, between Teku and Prism, likely see much fewer 128 blocks, I guess, over the next month and a half, certainly after Prater, because everyone will have upgraded.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, cool.
Actually, I do have a little tool that's been monitoring the redundant attestations, little node app. You could do with some cleaning up, but it happily logs each time a new block comes in with redundant attestation. It does a pretty good job at detecting them. It's kind of scary how often they come out, but hopefully we can use that to see it go down a bit more accurately than just attestation count as well.
Yeah, I imagine we're over 2/3 on redundant attestation blocks right now, before the upgrades kind of ripple outward.
Yeah, most blocks seem to have some redundancy. It's usually kind of a couple of overlapping attestations in there. Could be worse, but every now and then you kind of just see a whole bunch scroll by.
Right.
I haven't looked at the numbers too deeply because it doesn't log it to a database yet. Just kind of prints them. But still useful.
Gotcha. Okay, moving on. Merge discussion. I just want to let you know that later today, I've been working on a document to help coordinate our initial targets for DevNets between consensus and execution for merge DevNets in October, and I will share that with y'all today so that we can begin to be on the same page and kind of have a target for that. In other news, there was the continuation of the Engine API discussion this morning led by Mikhail. You can see his latest doc has all of the latest and greatest, although I'm sure a bit came out of that conversation and some changes that might ripple through there. There's like a core set, a minimal set of this that will be targeted for the initial wave of DevNets, and we'll make that clear. Other merge related discussions for today?
I'd like to share a couple of things. First, Dimitri from TXRX started to work on test vectors for the merge part of the beacon spec. This work has been initiated by Proto during Ryanism. So Dimitri's goal is to add more test vectors for those methods that are not yet covered by tests, and also some execution, some code branches that are not yet covered in the methods that already has unit tests. So the target date, I would say, next week for it's been ready. I mean, the PR
those
submitted.
Unit tests of some of those smaller functions, or are these like consensus test vectors that would be released to clients, or a bit of both?
Yeah, these are the goal is to have the consensus test vectors.
Got it.
It could be released, but it will be with the stopped execution engine. Could be, so it could be like good. Yeah, it could be just adopted by consensus clients without any other external dependencies.
Got it.
The other one is there is a PR. I'll drop it here, which proposes to use the random mix from the previous slot instead of the random mix of the current slot 4 as a random value that is passed to the execution client and eventually put it into the execution payload. There is the rationale in the PR and the discussion related to this.
Right. Another point. So I at least put something of an argument against it. I think I've softened up and now in favor of the PR. And another point in favor of the PR is an earlier design goal, which was to be able to rip the execution layer out into an independent shard if we wanted to, and the lagging of the randomness that's embedded in there would also help enable that goal.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, like the initial goal was to, one of the goals is to like make this design future compatible with proposer and builder separation, without making it too complicated to for builders and proposers to be on the same set of data that are required for building a payload. Like if we use the current RANDAO mix, then the proposer will have to communicate this RANDAO mix upon receiving the parent block through some channel to all block builders. And actually it means that it anyway reveals the random field in advance. So this kind of stuff is like one of the reasons for this PR.
I'll catch up on the thread. I just noticed there's a bunch of new comments, and we can try to get that through soon. Thank you, Mikael. Any other merge-related discussions for today? Great. Any general research updates? Got it. Any other discussions for today? Spec related, open discussion, any closing remarks?
I have like a small question. How do we want to proceed with the engine API stuff?
Yeah, where do
Do
you
we
want
want
that
to make
live?
another call?
I'm a bit resistant to doing another hour call where we walk through it. I think instead it might make sense for this to go into maybe the execution APIs repo or an independent repo, where we can probably do a PR per set of methods and take some discussion there and just start hammering it out.
Yeah,
a repo
that makes
allow
sense.
more people to engage with it too.
Right, and it also makes sense to crystallize the minimal set of methods to be implemented for the merge interop stuff.
Yeah, I mean, ideally a week from now, we have something in a repo that we can point to, and even if it still might be iterated on, people can begin to work on some implementations.
Yeah, cool. Let's do that.
Do we want, I know a couple months ago we thought the execution APIs under a different namespace would be the appropriate place. Is that where you're thinking?
Oh yeah, probably.
Okay.
So this doc, yeah, I was like looking at the JSON RPC stuff. Yeah, the execution API is there, and it's just pure specification without any additional comments on that. So I don't need to think about it.
Gotcha. And Light Client's here. I think he's one of the gatekeepers. Does that still make sense for the engine API to live there?
I definitely think the ultimate goal is to have it specified in the repo, but like Mika said, it is just a JSON spec. And so as some of the work is still going into deciding exactly what these are named, exactly what they look like, it might make sense to open an issue in the repo or keep working against the HackMD until we get it to the place where it wants to be finalized, and then we can convert it to the schema.
Okay. I'm a bit hesitant to not get it to leave it in the HackMD doc, just because from prior experience, there's just like a lack of depth on how people can engage with that. So
That's fair.
Definitely,
How do you
at
feel about
least-
an
at least
issue?
an issue, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, agree. Also, the Hakim did. It's difficult to follow if any update is there. It's been updated, like. You know.
And
Got
if it's an issue, well, again, I would probably argue moving towards code, or towards something that you can follow a diff on sooner rather than later. But if it's an issue, I'd open like 3 issues for each subset of the engine API so that conversation can be split up a bit.
Okay. Cool.
Okay. Anything else people would like to discuss, debate, or ruminate on today? Great. Let's plan on picking a fork epoch for Altair in 2 weeks' time. Yes, it was Micah. And doing a lot of testing analysis between now and then so that we can confidently move forward on that. And like I said, I'm going to share a document with y'all later today about the beginnings of coordinating on the next wave of DevNets for the merge. Thanks, everyone. Talk to y'all soon.
Thanks, Ron. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.
Thanks.
See you.
Thanks.
See you.